On today's episode, we are going to talk about how to add custom fonts to your WordPress site right here on Your Website Engineer podcast, episode number 506. Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Website Engineer podcast. My name is Dustin Hartzler, and today I've got a jam-packed episode. We're going to talk about some things that are happening in the news. I've got a couple plugins to share with you today, and we're going to talk about adding custom fonts to our WordPress site. So let's go ahead and dive right in. The first one that I want to share with you today, and the link is in the show notes for all of these articles, but the first one is over on WP.org in the news section, and it's this month in WordPress, the March 2021 edition. And so it basically kind of gives an idea of all the things that's happened in WordPress this month, or I guess last month, if you will. And WordPress 5.7 was released, Gutenberg 10.1 and 10.2 are out, and then there was some updates about full site editing and just kind of talking about the project and where they're going and whatnot. So that is a little bit of a recap of what's happening. There's a bunch of links and a bunch of articles that you can read over there. So that's the first announcement. The next announcement is the folks over at Post Status. They now have a podcast that is the Post Status Excerpt. There's been 4 episodes as of today's recording, and basically they're short excerpts. They're not quite as long as a full-blown podcast, and they talk all about just some things that are happening in the WordPress space, kind of a news, and kind of these things are happening, and they try to keep them under 20-ish minutes. So if you're listening to this podcast and like to hear more podcasts about WordPress, I'd recommend checking that out and learning a little bit about what's going on in the WordPress space on a week-to-week basis. That's hosted by Corey Miller and David Bissett, and so both of those folks have been in the WordPress community for a really long time, and it's really exciting to kind of hear from them and hear their take on the things that are happening in WordPress. Another thing that you may have heard about this week, and maybe not, but there has been a huge advertising campaign going out from Wix, and Wix is sending these people, these WordPress enthusiasts, headphones, and they're sending them Bose headphones, like $400 headphones, and they're sending them to people, and then they're claiming that they're coming from WP. It's like from your friends at WP, and it's this whole like advertising campaign. There's articles on it. I linked to one in the show notes to the article over on WP Tavern that's got some embedded tweets, and it has the different playlists and stuff that are there. But basically, it's their advertising campaign is "You Deserve Better," and even Matt Mullenweg wrote something on his blog, and I'll link to that as well, so you can kind of read and. Wix is just a funny thing. It's really not. I mean, it's kind of a competitor WordPress, but it's not. It's kind of like Squarespace or Shopify, but it doesn't have that big of a market share. There's not that many people in there. And interesting, on Matt's blog post, he wrote about how they. You may remember how this website builder was stealing WordPress code and lying about it. And part of Wix actually was using WordPress code to begin with, and so lots of weird things happening with this advertising campaign. And not sure who's in charge of it or whatnot, but that's just some more controversy going on in the WordPress space. Let's see if I've got any other things. There is a new plugin that you can insert font awesome icons into the block editor with a plugin called JVM Gutenberg Rich Text Icons. And so this is one that you can add icons like arrows, or you can have, the Apple logo, or you can have little images. They're called fav icons. We see them around a lot. They can be stylized and colored, things like that. So there's a link in the show notes on how you can add this plugin and what you can do. So basically, if you wanted to add arrows next to your headings, or you can put them right in line with your text, make those your bullet points, you can do some really cool things with them. So that is another plugin that I want to share with you. Then a couple more that are on the realm of the block editor plugins. And I'm a huge fan of the block editor if you've been listening for any length of time, but there is a couple different plugins that are there. One is called Full Screen Mode Be Gone, and that's the name of the plugin. You can search for that in the WordPress repository, and it basically gets rid of that full screen experience when you're on a post or a page and when you log into WordPress. So right now, if you're using the block editor, you go to a post, you go to a page, and it like fills up the whole screen and you can't see that left-hand sidebar anymore. This plugin will help you get around that so you don't have to worry about that anymore. And then there's another plugin by the same developer called Welcome to the Block Editor Be Gone. And these are funny names for plugins, but it does exactly that. It gets rid of that welcome message that's showing even if you've been using Gutenberg for a long time. So it's a little better experience. Like if you've logged into a site with, and I don't know if it triggers every time that there's a new update into WordPress, but I see it all the time. Is that little pop-up modal? It's like, welcome to the block editor. And it's got information about that. Well, if you're tired of seeing that, you can see the plugin to get rid of that. So there is a link in the show notes to get rid of that plugin as well. All right, let's go ahead and dive in and talk about, one more thing. Didn't have it on my list here, but I have it open in a tab. There is a new update to Jetpack if you're a Jetpack user, and it is Jetpack 9.6, and you can sell more stuff with search for your WooCommerce store. So this month, in this month's release of Jetpack, the Jetpack team is excited to announce official support for WooCommerce in the Jetpack search. So if you've been using Jetpack search for your WordPress site, so there's a feature inside of there that you can use to enhance your search on your WordPress site. Well, now it will search and it will find WooCommerce items that are in your store, and it'll work a lot better. By default, when the WordPress search worked, when you could use WordPress search, and I mean, it does work, but it doesn't do a very good job when you're running an e-commerce store. It won't search for products. It won't search for a lot of the things that people might be searching for. So you always need a different solution to search for products on a WordPress site. And now you can do that with Jetpack, which I think is really, really great. All right, so going on to the main part of the show today, and I want to talk about WordPress custom fonts. And the reason that this topic comes up is, as you know, I am helping my wife do a lot of work on a bunch of websites, doing a bunch of things. She's got her hand in a whole bunch of projects, and recently she went through a branding exercise, which I think is probably another topic for a different show, but just basically working with a graphic designer, coming up with, here's my target audience, and filling out all this information, and so it comes up and a new logo is created, and then they came up with custom fonts that should be used in her brand guidelines, and then talking about the different colors and the different, kind of rebranding this whole thing. And that's going to be an upcoming show as well, because I'm working on a project to move her from more of a green and brown tones to more of a teal and a dark blue. That's kind of is where we're going. And so I've been working on a single page for her, trying to implement some of these custom fonts that the graphic designer has given us. And it's like, okay, how do I figure out how to do this? How do I get this into WordPress and working properly, looking nice, and being a very good representation of her overall brand? It looks really good in print, as the graphic designer will give her, screenshots and different things, or like design a postcard, for example, and they'll do a great job designing a postcard and all these different things. So I want her site to look exactly the same as the rest of her branding. So I'm trying to figure out how to add these images, or how to add this custom font, and it's kind of a scripty font, and I wanted to add it to parts of the website. So that's what I set out to do this past week, and I was able to figure it out, but then I also wanted to share it here on a podcast. So there are a couple different ways that you can do this. You can, and there's actually, let's call it a handful of ways that you can actually do this. And the first way, and the absolutely the wrong way to do it, is to do it like we used to do in the old school ways. And you would go into Photoshop or, some sort of image editor, and you would type in the text, and then you would save that as an image, and then you would put that image on your webpage. So if you wanted a header of, welcome to my site, you would go in, you put welcome to my site, and you would save it as an image, and then you would put that on your website. Well, that's obviously, it doesn't work these days. You can't, it's not accessible. It's usually the wrong dimensions. You can't use CSS to make it bigger or smaller. It's usually pixelated. There's a whole bunch of reasons against that. So we're not going to do it that way. That's going to be, something we're not going to talk about today. But the first way that you could do it is, I guess there's a couple different ways to get a font. So one of the ways is you could just go to Google Fonts and you could find a font. There are more than 900 font families there. And so you can go and you can browse the font. It's really nice that you can see the font in different text sizes. So as you're browsing the fonts, you can change it comes in default at 40 pixels, and you can make that bigger or smaller. You can type something, a sentence, so you can see what it looks like. Maybe if you're looking for text for a specific, a block quote, or maybe you want your logo to be in a specific text, you could type that out and you could see that. And so you can look through here. I'm just looking, you got Roboto, you've got Latto, you've got Source Sans Pro, you've got Robomono, you've got a whole bunch of them that are there. PT Sans. I mean, there are, like I said, 900 of these fonts, and you can just scroll through them, and some of them are scripty, like Pacifico. I really like the Pacifico font for certain things. And so you can find a font there, and you can add that to your website. And that's one way to do that. That's going to be an easy way to do it. Or you could take a font that you've installed on your computer, and then you can add that to your website, which I've done. And that was what I ended up doing. So let's go ahead and talk through a couple of these things. So when it comes to your fonts, WordPress provides several ways. There's always several ways to do different things. So the first way is you can edit your theme file. So that's probably one of the easiest ways to do it. You can use a child theme if you'd like. And basically you are adding some sort of code. It's a link tag, and you would put it in the header.php file of your theme or your child theme. And you can, you'll get this code. If you're using Google Fonts, what you would do is you will go in here, and let me find the Pacifico font again. Let's see, it's right here, and I will click on this, and then I will say that, I'm trying to see where the best way to do this. You'll go over to the right. Once you click on the font itself, you'll go over to the right and you'll say select this style, and you'll click that style, and then it will share those families with others. And then it will give you the link tag right there on the right sidebar. It kind of slides over and it'll give you a link tag. So it's like, it says it is the greater than sign or the less than sign. And then it says link, then rel, and it says pre-connect. And then it's got the href, and it has a link directly to that font. And so you can click on that, and then you can copy that directly into that header.php. And then it shows that the CSS rules and how to apply this family is anywhere that you'd like this font to appear. Maybe it's your H1 tags, maybe it's your H2 tags, maybe you're wanting to put a new body tag. So you put that as a P tag. It's going to say you will change it to font-family, and then in quotes, it'll say Pacifico, cursive. And that comma cursive is going to be the fallback. So if for some reason the browser can't load the Pacifico browser or the Pacifico font, then it'll load some sort of cursive base default font. So that's the first way that you can do it. You can just go into your child theme and you can add it just like that. It's pretty simple to do that. And it is one of the easy ways to do that. The other way is to add the font itself to your themes folder. So if you're all about performance and optimization, this is going to be the route to go. The first way is when a person comes to your website, they are going to have to load your site, and then it's going to have to go out to Google servers to get the font and then come back and then display the font. But you can also, from Google Fonts, you can download the font, and then it will give you the font that you can put into your themes folder. And so normally I put these it's in the child theme, and then I put it in assets. So it's /assets/fonts, and then I put all the fonts in there. It's in its own folder, and then you can open up your CSS, your style sheet, and you can call on the font when you use it. So you will go, you'll add the font face, and then you'll import the font face in the top of your CSS, and I'll put a link in the show notes of what this looks like. And then you can use it just like before. You can say the font family, new font, and then you're off to the races. So that's an easy way to do that as well. So the first way is to link it right from your header. The second way is to upload the font file to your website and then link it from there. And then the third way is using a plugin. There is several plugins out there. The Fonts plugin, the Google Fonts plugin, typography, custom fonts are two that are good that you can use to do the exact same thing. You can take those Google fonts and you can pull them in directly. It's basically taking that linked information that you got from the Google page, and it's going to add that directly to your site without having to do any customizations whatsoever. And I'm sure too that you can go in and you can even write a little a function to go into your snippets plugin, your functions.php file to go in. And I didn't do research to figure out what exactly that would be, but you could go and you could import that same link, doing the same thing and put it into a custom snippet. That way that it's not living in your theme, and you can always have that font when you move themes. Now, sometimes fonts are better served to stay with a theme, so it's okay to put it in the functions.php file. But I always recommend the snippets plugin is usually a little bit better to put things in there. You can always toggle it on and off a lot easier. You're not messing with the code. If you put this custom code in a theme that you purchased, and then the developer rolls out an update, so they give you an update and you update the theme, then you're going to lose that custom CSS, that you're going to lose all of those changes that you made. So that's probably a better way to make sure that things like that don't happen. So you put it in a snippets plugin. I like one called Code Snippets, and it's out there on the WordPress repository. So that's it. Those are the steps to go ahead and add custom fonts to your WordPress site. And like I said, I'm learning a ton here. So some of the things that are coming up and things that I'm learning about how to use CSS variables, how to, update my CSS so that, kind of going through this rebranding strategy. So I'm working through that and trying to figure out the best way to explain that and the best way to, change your, maybe you have a client's website or your site and you want to change colors. You want to use the same theme, but you just want to change colors. How do we do that? And so I'm working through trying to figure out the best way to explain that. And that's my project for April, to try to get my wife's website turning from, green to teal and updating all those fonts as well. So that's what I've been working on over here. I've got tons to do, obviously, tons still working on my basement, getting a project going. I've got my whole office is now insulated. So it's soundproofed, insulated against the rest of the basement. And then there's going to be some in the ceiling as we get closer to the drywall people coming back. And so it's going to be a nice place. I'm excited to get down there and do some work from the basement instead of the corner of a bedroom. But that's another project for another day. So until next week, take care and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.
For more great WordPress information, head on over to yourwebsiteengineer.com.